All right, we're recording.
Thank you.
Okay. So, beyond that, I don't see anything else moving forward at the moment. So let's get to our,
Did you get the minutes already?
no,
Okay, may I?
please.
There are a copy of the draft meeting minutes from March over there. And are welcome to read, but, and I was asking if anyone would like to move to accept these minutes.
I have a minor correction.
Okay, Mark's got a question.
Fifth to the last word on Russell or amend property, sixth to the last word should be property, not. Other than that, I think. Pretty good.
Mark is here every Thursday night and he loves to do improv with whoever's here. So come on now.
I have
Yeah.
maybe one other thing.
Yes.
The very last article, 5B.
Yes.
I'm suspecting that, Jennifer and John Green, see code and being,
Yeah, you're right. It looks like I wrote that John and Jennifer seem uncoordinated.
He's always.
Their comments were that the efforts
That's
to,
why I
um,
visit him so often.
the efforts, for code enforcement seem uncoordinated. Thank you. Oh, so I'll work on those.
On the
Yes.
second page,
Yeah.
the alcohol license,
Yeah.
what is Sylvia's last name?
I don't know. I met her at the
Sylvia Lopez.
Lopez. She's here tonight. Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you. I mentioned you, Sylvia, in the minutes.
Yes. Hi, can you hear me?
You.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Website, finally I did that, so.
And what is the thing on election days? Yeah. After the dash of May 2nd, who is Sandra G and the park at Pope?
Xandra Gilmore was attended the meeting and she lives at the park at Boat Creek and she's also an election official. She wanted to know about last day to not vote first, to register first, or I just did my best writing it down, but I don't know if it's right or wrong.
No, it's good.
Or that may be what she said, but it's not true, I don't know.
only as good for last.
So election days, early voting begins April 24th. Last day to vote in person is May 2nd. Sandra G is a resident of NACA at the park at Boat Creek. And
I move that the minutes be adopted with amendments.
okay, we can amend.
Second motion.
Okay, Brian. Thanks, Ian.
Motion second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. It's done.
Yeah, amended.
So, let's move on to our primary, project, so. Jocelyn, you looking forward?
Yeah.
You gonna bring the crowd? We'll bring the crew.
So we do have an optional sign-in sheet in case you all want to receive project next updates. Feel free to sign into this. Don't want to make you over-sign things, so. Did you get that? Yeah, you got
I
it.
do have it.
All
I'm
right.
just pulling it up right now.
What's that room here?
Oh, thank you.
You can set.
Wherever you're comfortable, wherever you're comfortable.
This is my
Um,
best.
Try to have your better side facing the camera. please.
Okay. We have also like sheet. If the maps that we have that are gonna be on the screen are so small, that these are also small, but at least you have them closer to you. So, sure. Anybody else? And these are bilingual. We applaud your organization in efforts to go bilingual. One time.
Sign great.
Oh, great, okay.
Right.
Sign. We're already receiving materials, and we don't have to sign yet.
Yeah, that's fine. Is it gonna go?
Yes, but my computer is very slow.
Don't apologize, it's fine.
It's overtaxed. at the
I'll
moment.
just keep entertaining. You just let me know when you're ready. Hi, Monica. It's nice to see your face on camera. So I'll just start with a brief introduction. My name is Jocelyn Vokes, and I represent the Austin Transit Partnership with my colleagues here, Sophia Ojeda and Vikram Sinha. And we are when Capital Metro and the city of Austin came together on the November 2020 vote to have Project Connect, when that passed, that created the Austin Transit Partnership in order to execute many parts of Project Connect. What we are looking to move forward with today is the light rail implementation. And so we are in our 6-week comment period, which actually closes on May 2nd. So a lot of things happen on May 2nd, including this. And so what we are trying to do is to get feedback as to where we think the initial phase of this light rail project should go. Now, what are we hearing? I'm just going to start right now with some mythbusters. What are we hearing? We didn't get what we voted for. Very common to hear that. What we voted for on the Project Connect map is an entire system that's going to improve transit in all of Austin. We have Metro Express, Metro Rapid buses and pickup services that are already being rolled out. And we have, so it's other components. It's not just like, but since Austin Transit Partnership has been tasked with building the light rail, and we've been affected, unfortunately, by things such as, worldwide inflation. We are having to limit our budget a little bit more, so that in order for us to be competitive with amongst other programs nationwide that are going for federal funding. And so if we are not competitive, and that means we have to provide increased riders, we have to be fiscally responsible, we have to make sure that we're serving places in need. If we don't do those things which make us more competitive in the eyes of the Fed, then we do not get a federal match. Then it really would truly be up to Austin, if we still wanted to move forward with this, to fully fund this as a city on our own. But if we're competitive and the Federal Transit Administration says this is a good project, let's go ahead and make that match, then they will go ahead and help us fund this rail project. So what we're going to say is these are the options that are on the back of the sheet that you have here. And so we're going to go over them in a little bit more detail here. And what we're saying is that this is just where we want to see the line start. And so we're looking at this being really the first 10 years of this service. So, that's what we're really looking at this being. And from there, more funding sources could come, more additional partnerships. When the FDA, the Federal Transit Administration, came to visit us, they said, why aren't you partnering with the FAA, the Aviation Administration? So there are other funding sources that could come to us. But that's further down the road. So right now we want to be fiscally responsible and show the federal government that we have a great, first starter program. So I'll ask for the slide, please.
We're good. Okay.
Do you have a click, or do you want me to click?
It's all right. I can.
I don't want to.
Ryan's the pilot. He can.
He's
do
the
it.
pilot. I'll just go on for the ride. Okay, so when we're talking about light rail, what are we talking about? We are talking about the first ever light rail service. Now, people may say, do we have that red line? Is that red line, that train that always goes up and down? That is actually considered heavy rail. So heavy rail, how is that different? That was one of the first questions when I was employed by the Austin Transit Partnership is, why doesn't this thing run beyond work hours and on weekends? And the answer to that is because when we brought rail to Austin, they needed to fund it. And the way they did it was they brought in freight to run on those same tracks. Part of Project Connect is double tracking the red line so that we can have more consistent light rail rail service that service here locally rather than freight. Does someone online have a question?
Okay.
Okay. So here, what I know this is hard to see, but what I'm going to explain here is that a lot of these plans will say on street. And what does that look like? So on-street would look like, oops, could go, yeah, is that we would still have a lot of connectivity where we would have pedestrians, bicycles, trees. We're very conscious of our trees here in Austin, as well as car lanes. And then we would have the rail running down the middle. A lot of this rail is already programmed to run in the middle of right of way on Lamar, mostly on Lamar and Riverside, where the streets are already wide. Our takes are going, when we go into properties, what we are really prioritizing is housing. And so we don't want to take any housing in order to build this light rail. We want to take, if we have to take, where we have to take, we want to take businesses, parking lots, and help them relocate or figure out something else for their parking availability. Next slide, please. So where are we? The Austin Path to Light Rail. If you've been in Austin for a while, you may even remember the first time we even mentioned light rail publicly was in 1985. I was 2 years old. That's embarrassing to say. But really, that's how old this light rail talk has been. And even in the 70s, we had papers that were turned in that said Austin needs light rail. We finally got it passed in 2020. Here in Austin. Thank you to everyone who voted, and thank you especially to those who voted for it. But from 2021 to 2023, we have been working on preliminary engineering especially post-pandemic. So adjusting for all of this inflation that has come through. And so we've been adjusting with the plan. And our goal, again, I mentioned that we're City of Austin, Cap Metro, and ATP. Our goal is to, in June, bring a proposal to all three entities and their boards and have them all agree on one plan. So if you know politics in Austin, you know that's a really heavy lift. But what they're having us do is they're gonna have us bring all of this community engagement. We have a virtual open house online. We're going to countless community meetings. And we're gathering thousands and thousands of people's feedback to come back and say what is important for us to prioritize. And then we would advance Austin's light rail program from there. Slide, please. So what we're looking at is our measures and our values. Of course, this is what I was discussing at first, is we need to make sure that it's financially viable and technically viable, especially for the eyes of the FTA, the Federal Transit Administration. And they are going to look at planning data, community values, and the connectivity. Does it connect to existing bus and electric bikes and all the systems that we already have in place? FTA wants to use this as a golden standard for nationwide, especially when it comes to community engagement. And so they are really putting pressure on us to say, get as much community engagement as possible and then show us how you use it. I'm really excited about that. Next slide, please. Okay, so here are your system options. And I won't make you look at it on this screen because you have this on your flyer in front of you. So just go slide by slide. Next slide, please. So the first one you have on here is, oh, okay. Sorry, the first one on the screen is actually the one right here. I'll make that correction. On street from North Lamar to Pleasant Valley. This is probably the one you're going to be the most interested in because it comes to the North Lamar Transit Center, which is at North Lamar and 183. What you're going to notice on all 5 of these options is the green dot. This green dot right here represents a maintenance facility. And we'll cover a little bit more about the maintenance facility in a little bit. But for right now, I want you to look at how far it's going to go. So does anybody here currently ride Cap Metro? Raise your hand. Okay, what route do you agree with?
801.
801? 801.
The 10 and the 300 actually.
Okay. Anything else? The one. Okay, yeah. And 801. Yep. Okay, great. So this, and somebody in the chat said something too.
Once in a blue moon.
Oh, once in a blue
Monica.
moon. Hey, Monica. We'll need to catch a ride sometime together. So here we have, this is basically what the 801 looks like right here. So from North Lamar Transit Center down to Republic Square, and then from it will cross the lake. Now here we have a couple of lake crossing options. We could either cross at the South First Street Bridge, so you may be familiar with that bridge already. Or if we could just add on to it so that we're able to cross that, or we could build a new bridge at Trinity Street. And so those are the two options that come with that. We'll go to and then here we're just gonna see, these are the average number of daily riders served, so between 38,000 and 39,000. And then the miles of new light rail is between 9.6 and 9.8 miles. You're gonna see these look approximately the same, that some lower ridership numbers. Let's see, our College Girls uses the 801 and the 7, great. And then Sylvia, anytime you have to go downtown, that's great. We're glad to hear it. And so you'll see these just kind of stay in the same range. These don't mean too much other than, okay, we have, this one probably serves the most amount of riders right now because it goes so far north. Because it comes all the way to the North Lamar and 183 intersection. But they're all 5 of these are within our budget, and they are all considered to be competitive within the eyes of the FTA. Next slide, please. So the next one we see is on street from 29th Street, which is just north of UT. And this one would go on street to the airport, of course, across the river. But this would cross the river at the new bridge on Trinity Street. And it would go all the way to the Austin airport. So that's another one. Now, where you see the green dot over here, this is where airport commerce is along river, close to Riverside and 71, where the hotels are. What I will tell you about this site is that it is in Montopolis saw this and was like, oh no, you're taking away our housing. We're not. We're actually building in an AO3 flight zone, which is currently zoned to not be used for any kind of residential use. So we don't want to cause a public panic in that sense. So this would be the only other option for where we would put a maintenance facility as right now. And it would serve the Austin Bergstrom Airport.
I have a question. So there's no transit hub related to that one? So where would people park if they wanted to go on 29?
I'm so glad you brought that up because this teeny tiny peak right here represents a new park and ride that would go in the 71 area. Yeah, 71 in Riverside. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, we have the on street from 38th Street to Yellow Jacket. Now, depending on which option we choose for the lake crossing, we could go as far north as 45th Street, and we could go as far south as St. Edwards. And so just depending on that, on the lake crossing, but then it would go out east, so that's our north-south. And then to go out east, it would stop at Yellow Jacket, which is Yellow Jacket Lane, which again is close to 71 in Riverside, and the park and ride is right there. And so people could use that park and ride to hop on if they're coming from Del Valle or, you know, anywhere closer to the airport as well. Next slide, please. Okay, the next one is partial elevated from 29th to Old Wharf to Yellow Jacket. So this one has a shorter leg to here. It still goes to Yellow Jacket. This yellow part in the middle would actually be partially elevated. The way I explain that is, imagine a new freeway going through downtown that carries the train up and over front. Okay, a couple of things. You'll notice on your options that we do have an underground option. If you are at street, the project is going to cost one price. If you go above ground, it's going to be 3 to 5 times more expensive. If you go underground, it's going to be 10 times more expensive along that segment. So it means we could go higher or lower, but that does mean we go shorter on certain. Next slide, please. And then we have a partial underground. So this is the tunnel I'm talking about right here. So it would be underground from 20th Street to 8th Street under Guadalupe with one downtown station. And then it would be elevated from 8th Street to east of Auditorium Shores. And then it would go again to this Yellow Jacket Lane with the parking right there. And next slide, please. So here, I just brought some images for you to be able to imagine what this might look like. So I have to say it for everyone online in person, these are artist renderings. These are nothing to hold us to the fire to, nothing to panic about, if there's something you don't like it. This is just so that we can have the artist representation to kind of get our mind's eye around it. So we have our on-street downtown. Next slide, please. And so here we have, you can see that we have bike lanes, and then here, well, this is a tricky one at Republic Square because we would have some cars that would, Sophia, you're better at explaining. These are my experts that can get me out of a bind. What's happening in this one? It's the cars, there's no through traffic here, right?
There is, so the cars would be going, Guadalupe would change from one-way south to two-way, meaning we'll have one lane southbound and one lane northbound. And the same would happen for Lavaca. Lavaca right now is a one-way north. We will look to be changing that also to lanes northbound and southbound. So the images you see are that black car is heading northbound. And where the bike is, that's also a bus lane, which is heading south. So the bikes and the buses and the cars for local access only would be sharing one lane.
Thank you. Of course, here on the side, we have just some examples of how around the world, from Sydney, Jerusalem, Paris, and Portland, of how this works in other cities. Next slide, please. Here is where I'm talking about partial elevated. So this is the freeway that's going to be carrying the lane up above us. So what this could look like for different access points. And so we have, different, whether it's stairs, escalators, elevators, and that would take you up for access points. Next slide, please. Same thing, elevated at an intersection. Next slide, please. And here we're just highlighting the fact that you can have, bus lanes and bike lanes going underneath the structure. Next slide, please. And then here we have, so partial elevated south of the river. Here we've got a train and what that looks like as it's coming, across. And what that would look like as far as having an elevated sort of train freeway structure that would go across and the transition. And so what are we hearing? That's great. Thank you so much. What are we hearing? So basically, I would say the number one thing we've heard in just about every community meeting is, why aren't the shovels on the ground? Get going, like build it now. We need this now, stick with traffic now. And then from there, we have questions about the length, the value, and then everything, what are the options? Why aren't you building as far south or as far north? Other recommendations. We have mixed feedback about reaching the airport. So some folks are saying, if you got, 35,000 passengers on average go to the airport, plus 6,000 people who work there. If you got those folks off the road, that would make room for me. And other people say, you have all these people coming in from out of town, you need to serve us here before you serve the out of towners. So you can see how there are valid points on each side of the argument. And what we're coming to you is to say, what matters to you? What should we value when we're looking at this? And Councilmember Vela is also looking to make a recommendation too. And then, just questions about timeline and budget, because that's going to affect us in Austin. Next slide, please. Okay, the maintenance facility. This is a fun one. So when you hear maintenance facility, what I first thought of was clinging and clanging and dirty and oil and all of this. These are electric trains. That's what's really exciting, is that the electric trains are quiet. The loudest part of the train that you're going to hear is going to be the air conditioning component of it to keep everybody heated or cooled inside. But what we do need, this is basically, as I tell my little 4-year-old, I say that the train needs a place to go sleep. This is what we're going to be building, is a place for them to be cleaned, to be repaired, inspected. It would be a site that is completely secure, up to Homeland Security standards, because we would be a federal transportation project. And we would have crew, administrative, and supervisor space. And it would have a light rail transit control center, which I have pictures of in the next. And this is, so here we have, so here's what I'm going to say here. The rail operations control down here. If you were to go visit our site in North Ops, which is off of Burnett, you walk into the control room, it really looks like a NACA control center. You've got so many people on different computers, just kind of eyeing all of the metro, Cat Metro transit all over. You've got cameras, you've got TVs. Yes, sir.
Motion this would be,
Where the green dots are on each of these.
so you have multiple,
So that there's
We'll
one,
have one maintenance facility, depending on which option. We need to have a maintenance facility, as part of the project, so. One option has a maintenance facility in North Lamar Transit Center, and the others are by the Yellow Jacket / Airport Commerce site that just.
so the one up by the Kramer station is not, considered right now?
That will not be a maintenance facility because we need to have the light rail tracks go to it. And so we're not proposing light rail to head towards Bergen. So we can't utilize that. Also, that site is maxed out in current Cap Metro operations. And this facility would be purely for the light rail.
and so.
Good question.
Yeah, great question. And so we do have the different job opportunities that would be there. We're looking at having about 300 jobs that would be offered there. As far as the community opportunities as well, this first picture on the upper left-hand side is Cap Metro's current Art on the Bus program, how we get our elementary school kids engaged in having their artwork compete and selected to be on our public transit or on our buses, and they go around town. But when we're talking about this, and again, only one of these options comes to North Lamar Transit Center in 183, is what could we do with the neighboring community, the neighboring schools around? What are the opportunities to partner with the career and technical education programs that we know Navarro has really strong ones, in construction and electricity? What can we do to start a middle school mentorship program so that we have kids working with our staff and our staff working with kids that start in the 6th grade and then go up from 6th to 12th grade, and then going into their community colleges and trade schools. And again, this is a phased-in approach. So at one point, do we work with the construction? And then when we come to ribbon cutting, the future operations of having people operating the trains, and, you know, just working on repairing them. So we are looking at strong workforce development, certification, and apprenticeship components. And then whichever one of these is selected, we would work with the local communities to say, and what else can we offer? Yes, sir.
So I've been working with Project Connect and involved with this loosely one way or the other since 2010 or maybe earlier. And the battle to get recognition from the North Transit Center to be a valid endpoint has been extremely challenging. And I would not recommend us considering any other alternative than to have the North Transit as an endpoint. I've got the emails. I've got the responses from my colleagues through Central Austin and South Austin. I also think that South Austin is being strongly considered. But for us here at the North Austin Civic Association to consider this, it has to be a North Austin Central Transit Authority.
And I would add.
There have been a number
No, you go.
of decisions that have occurred as far as right of ways and the way Central Austin and the business district have treated us historically. That as a member of the community, I advocate against anything else other than us having a North Austin transit endpoint.
And then
My 2 cents.
I would add to his 2 cents, the other 2 cents being that this is one of the more densely populated areas of town. And one of the things about the red line is the stops carefully avoid the dense part of the population.
Right.
And that does not make sense. And so, again, to your point, we hear a lot about people driving things and they make a lot of noise and they represent very few people and very few people who are using transit. And I think that this neighborhood,
We're one of the smallest districts and we have the most people.
And the most languages.
and then there's that.
Oh, yeah. Oh. Everybody's church here. Knows that.
Yeah.
Everybody's church.
We have a comment from Monica Guzman, who's basically seconding that as well.
Okay. District 4 is the most densified area outside of downtown. Okay.
Thank you.
Right.
Monica.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Melinda Shira, and I have been involved with Project Connect 2 since 2011 or 2012. Going through all of the community engagement back then, and the previous fund, failed, and there was more research, it seemed like, and you guys came back. Project Connect came back with another plan, and it really seemed like the purpose was to serve North Lamar. So now we're looking at all these options, and I kind of feel like any other option does not really fit that plan. And so I'm kind of wondering why not just North Lamar? Why is it all of these other options? Like, what is the con? What is the reason for not?
Oh, what is the reason for not bringing it up north?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like what is the con? What's
So-
the negative parts about this one that people don't want this?
So I will say, I live in 78753. I'm a North Austin resident. I will just couch my comment with this because I will present you cons, but please know that it's not my personal perspective.
Yeah,
If you bring it this far north, this part of North Lamar is controlled by TxDOT. Right now, there's a House bill that's making some serious progress in wanting to kill this project and wanting to bring it back to the voters. And the feeling politically is that if we put too much of our efforts into messing with TxDOT, that's also why there's only one, and I will say, funding and everything is a huge part of this too, right? There's also people who live in Southeast Austin are saying, there's only one option that's going to the airport, and what are you doing to serve Del Valley and Dove Springs and all the way down the line, right? There's another TxDOT intersection there. So it's almost like, do we push and then basically put a target on our backs? So that's the reasoning, that's some of the reasoning that I'm hearing. If you look at the ridership, because we're so densely populated up here, the cost per rider actually it makes most sense coming from North Lamar because it goes so much more farther and it serves so many more people. But I'm just giving you a perspective as to why, people might say.
yeah, it's really unfortunate. I mean, over the past few years, we want improvements to North Lamar, and that's
For sure.
we keep hearing that TxDOT wants to retain control, and it's very unfortunate. Even wanting to beautify the area, the underpass underneath 183.
Yeah.
It's just really, really unfortunate, and I wish that we could make our voices heard for sure, and change it.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing I will say, for you, is that do not want to demonize TxDOT because I've actually been on a lot of calls with them and they're very pleasant and very willing to work with us. So I'll just say that and I'll let you say what.
And I let me jump in right quick, because this is probably the number one thing that now, and let me just say that I completely agree with John that it has the best ridership. North Lamar Pleasant Valley has the best ridership, 40,000, as opposed to some of the other lands, like 20,000. So we're talking about double the ridership. It scores the best in terms of access to businesses, of working class people having access to like rail. To me, when you look at everything, it's a no-brainer, honestly. It's a no-brainer to go to Runberg. Because Runberg is the best bus stop outside of downtown. So it just, in so many ways, it makes sense. Unfortunately, or fortunately, TxDOT controls Lamar from 183 north. TxDOT in the past killed our South Lamar. We were gonna put those designated bus lanes on South Lamar, and TxDOT said, that's our highway. Don't touch it. San Antonio did something similar on Broadway into the big old street in San Antonio, beautiful kind of. They wanted to put rapid bus lanes in San Antonio, and they said no. TxDOT said no. If we go to North Lamar Transit Center, I was talking with engineers and stuff at ATP, we take like 4 feet of shoulder from TxDOT on either side. And, the trains actually have to access the North Lamar Transit Center. So, we're gonna have to cut into the street, and every once in a while when the train comes, the gates come down and block. So very minimal disruption of any kind of, traffic there. The local TxDOT people are absolutely, they're like, not a problem with us, y'all can do it. The risk, and we can't answer this, that's what I'm saying, like, we're gonna have to just decide is what if we decide on North Lamar Transit Center, and a year from now, the governor says, no, we refuse to let you use our right of way for that tiny little bit of space that we need. We don't even need a lot of right of way, we just need a tiny little bit of right of way. I don't think we can solve for that risk. You know what I mean? We kind of need to decide with the idea that I can go at any moment if we decide to pick the North Lamar Transit Center. That's where I want to go. I'm struggling with that right now. I mean, I'm just kind of like, do we do it knowing that in, a year from now, that the hammer comes down and we've spent, $1 billion on, design and preliminary engineering and all this stuff like that. And then, we're gonna kind of have to go back to square one and figure out what to do. Those are pending decisions. And the other reason they're talking about why not North Lamar, the trains have to have, and it's when I have a 5-year-old too, like, basically, And so if we can use North Lamar Transit Center as the train yard, then that gives us access all the way south, all the way east. That's a starting point. And so we start from North Lamar and then we go as far as we can, to the points beyond, right? If we can't use the North Lamar Transit Center, the only other place that we can put the train yard is out by the airport. So we have to start from the other end of the line. And then it's just a matter of how far north can we go? In my conversations with ATP, to me, my alternative, which they're working on and they're gonna take a very serious look at, if we do start all the way east, I want to get at least to Crescent. I think, no, that's our right of way the whole way through. TxDOT has to let us use I-35, cross at I-35, because they put that in their environmental impact statement for the I-35 rebuild. They said, hey, as part of this rebuild, one of the good environmental things is we're going to be train on a Riverside and I-35. So they've already committed to the feds and to themselves, really, that they're going to allow us to, so that takes away any kind of risk crossing I-35. Again, that's the zero political risk option would be to start at Yellow Jacket and then go up. The only problem with that is that if we start at Yellow Jacket, will the money get us all the way to Crestview? That's another open question right now. But if we can get to Crestview, and just one more thing. Crestview, we're gonna have to, if we do go to North Lamar Transit Center, we're gonna have to vary the first line. The red line that comes through there, it's just gonna get too complicated. It's gonna be just too much mess. Everybody can't be crossing at the same point. That's gonna be really expensive to vary the freight line, because the freight line, like it has such a tiny little grade, like, it goes up and down very slowly. So we're gonna have to vary it like a mile in each direction, so it can, kind of slowly go down, go under North Lamar, and then slowly continue to go back up, and it's gonna be in the like $200 million, $250 million plus. So one possibility would be that we go to Crestview and not past Crestview, and thus we don't have to, spend, $250 million burying the, so just so y'all know, those, that's kind of where I am right now. You know, I'm 100% North Lamar Pleasant Valley. That's, I think that by, you know, heads and tails, the best line. Ooh, is it worth the risk of, you know, giving kind of Greg Abbott the kill switch, you know, on the project? We're
Tough decision.
it is a tough decision, and there's no answer to that. Like, you know, what I mean, there's no pinky promise that you know what I mean, if we do, you know, we're just gonna have to, you know, kind of cross our fingers and hope that it turns out well, so.
Politically speaking, when we say it might land on Greg Abbott's desk, when we're talking about time frame and political cycles, where are we gonna land? His career, and that, we haven't had any other kind of governor for 45 million years. No, I know, but
Hasn't been that long.
They're not term limits, right? So
Right.
it's,
Yeah, and he just went.
Yes.
And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the federal application is gonna be 24 to the end of 2024. The idea would be to choose a line this summer, you know, June. And then prepare the application and submit the application by, let's say, you know, I think August 2024, something like that for is that
Fall of 24.
Fall of 24, you know, so, you know, but that's gonna be a risk that we can't avoid. I don't think we can, you know, I think though, if we do, I would say this, if we do choose the North Lamar Transit Center, I think we have to have a plan B. We have to understand that it may go wrong and we have to have an alternate kind of plan. Yes, sir.
I don't see an option to drop it, Chris.
There's not one on there, but like the option, the one where it starts on the east and it goes to the south and to the north, that one on there. The question would be like, if we take that one, where it starts on in Yellow Jacket and then it goes, like there's a path to Old Forest and then the path up to like 45th Street. If we cut off the south branch of that, how can we use those resources to continue to go north?
I think the council member is ordering off the menu.
Yes.
When you go to In-N-Out. Style.
And this is not, you know, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Like we can kind of mix and match if we want to. There's nothing barring us from that. And the conversations among, you know, council members and I think to a certain extent ATP and stuff have been like, you know, we can mix and match. It's just, can we get to Crestview if we start at Yellow Jacket with the money that we have? And then one more thing, the airport. It's gonna be really expensive to get to here, for various reasons. We're gonna have to elevate the train because of complicated things that I'm not 100%, you know, understanding, but TxDOT's gonna expand 71 next to the airport. There's a flight zone where like you cannot put anything, and so it's gonna be really expensive to get to the airport. And so honestly, I think it's kind of off the table for the moment, but we can use airport money to build the rail on airport property. We can use hotel motel money to build the rail to the airport. So there's kind of, I think this conversation has started and potentially FAA grants, Federal Aviation Administration grants. So like, it's kind of like, let's hold off on airport for a second and see if we can, you know, put together little pockets of money from these other locations and then extend to the airport when we have a better kind of, I think, financial grasp of where we are, what we want to do with.
What were the groups that are actually putting
We have a comment online.
Excuse me, do we have someone making a comment online?
Or someone's
Might be
unmuted.
computed. I think they're.
That was unmuted. Sorry about that.
Oh, here we go.
I
So
saw Kara with your hand up also. Did you have a question? Okay, just want to make sure we got some.
So Councilman,
Yes.
so like learned very long ago that legislation is like making sausage. You don't always want to look at it. It sounds to me like to really get a good deal here, there's gonna have to be a little more give and take. I think it's important that light rail serve as many people as possible in the city of Texas, citizens that are paying the taxes and working here. So, what's your recommendation?
I would say I'm still trying to, normally, honestly, I'm willing to handle risk. You know what I mean? I'm willing to kind of, push the envelope. I'm very risk averse with this. I want it to happen and I want it to work and I don't want to, I'm still honestly weighing in. And there's also, I wanted to get to Crestview because the red line goes to Crestview. And like, we're double tracking the red line, at McCalla, at the stadium. And, so there's a lot of opportunities to where now, if you're in Northwest Austin, you can take the diesel train to Crestview Station and then switch, and then you have one shot right into downtown and into the good part of downtown. I mean, not good, but like the business part of downtown. The kind of the center of downtown has kind of moved from like, let's say like 6th and Congress to kind of like 2nd and Guadalupe, like, you know what I mean? Like in that area, like that's where all the tallest buildings, that little kind of western edge of downtown has really become kind of the economic center of downtown. So I think it's important also that we at least get to Crestview so we can tie the red line into there. Plus, North Lamar Transit Center doesn't have, and I'm going to confirm this with Capital Metro. These are just conversations that I haven't seen the data yet, but all the riders there, I think, are transfer riders. Like there's not a lot of kind of, neighborhood riders at the North Lamar Transit Center. We can turn Crestview into the North Lamar Transit Center, so where all your kind of northern buses are feeding into Crestview, which then, feeds into the line, which shoots everybody. In other words, Crestview could have, 8,000, 9,000 riders a day. Right now, they're predicting about, 4,000 or so riders a day, 3,500 riders a day at Crestview Station. And I mean, you all have seen the apartments that are going up, around left and right next to Crestview Station. And that's going to continue, believe me. All those warehouses and, the stuff that hasn't flipped yet, it's going to flip soon. And there's going to be so much potential ridership around. We've got to get to Crestview. I mean, I'm just kind of like, if we stop at 45th, no, or at Koenig or whatever, like, no, got to get to Crestview. And one last thing. When we do that, the 801, we can shift the 801 farther north. The 801 then feeds North Lamar to Crestview. And then the 801 essentially stops in Crestview and, transfers. So if you're at Rumburg, no, the line doesn't actually get to you, but now you're just one quick bus ride to the light rail, and then you have a quicker, more comfortable, just better ride to downtown. So there's so many, we've got to get to at least Crestview. If we don't choose the North Lamar Transit Center to Pleasant Valley route, I think we've absolutely got to Crestview. And I'm going to push for that both on my council capacity and I was appointed to Capital Metro. So in my Capital Metro capacity as well, I'm 100% bringing as far north as we can possibly bring the line.
I have a question. What the idea, that sounds like a giant spaghetti bowl that all the everything goes together at Crestview. Then what happens to North Lamar?
We have to wait.
I mean, in general, right now, I don't have to choose.
Yeah.
People will park cars there and then go from there, but
it could be, and the plan before all this got started, they wanted to do a redevelopment of North Lamar Transit Center. And by the way, if we put the rail yard there, we can build on top of the rail yard. Other cities in the United States and internationally have done that. Like they have the rail yard right there, but then there's like, residential and commercial development on top of it, and the trains just go in and out of the garage basically underneath. So just because we have the rail yard at North Lamar Transit Center doesn't mean it's going to be just kind of an empty industrial center. On the contrary, we can build up above it and have the rail yard right underneath it. There's no emissions and stuff either, so it's not polluting anything. If you had a diesel bus that's under there or something like that, that would be a problem. But since it's all electric, you don't really have to worry about emissions or like oil leaks and gas leaks and stuff like that. That would make it maybe not compatible with residential. But so if we don't use North Lamar Transit Center as a rail yard, I think then the question we need to redevelop. turn it into a better, you know, property, a better use of the land than an empty parking lot, most of the time.
So I'll just add real quick that
Please.
Cat Metro is studying the North Lamar Transit Center as an equitable transit oriented development site. So whether we're there or not, Cat Metro is looking to already have plans for the transit center kind of parking lot area already.
Yeah, that's Cap Metro's land.
That's Cat
So
Metro.
hard because there's been so much, like there was one to three.
Right.
A nightmare, yeah, up, down, up, down, up, down.
Right.
and the,
We want to take, get the questions off of.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Among your council members on the Crestview idea, have you discussed this with them and do you have any kind of positive energy coming your way?
Yes, and I would say the Capital Metro is also, would love to tie the red line into, you know, it's also, so Cap Metro wants to maximize the ridership. Crestview, the farther north we go, the better ridership gets. So there's, I think, substantial support, broadly speaking, for going as far north as we do. There's substantial support for maximizing ridership, and that means going as far north as we can go, because that's where the riders are. Yes, sir, John.
So how can we help you on the horse trade? Where if we say, okay, you don't stop north of Lamar, but you're gonna put the rail yard there.
I would say send comments saying go as far north as you can possibly go on Lamar.
I mean, we want that, I mean, that's a big economic boost for this area. And it would tie in with Austin Community College, the high school, it would be.
The jobs and security.
I mean, even beyond that, just would force things like.
Let me
research.
comment on that. For what I understood you saying, if we can have a station at Crestview, but still have the maintenance facility at North Lamar.
This is my opinion, nobody else may share that,
Sure.
but I would make that trade in New York, man.
Okay.
In other words, just get to Crestview, right, regardless
Well,
of.
you got the, I mean, you
Yeah.
got the, you got 1,000 yards between Crestview and North Lamar, take the bus, get high school kids, walk it. But I mean, having trains maintained there, having the opportunity for those jobs in this neighborhood, in my mind.
Now, let me comment on that also, because it's not much of a trade-off. Because you still have to run tracks from Crestview to North Lamar in order for the trains to get to North Lamar. And that would be what's called a non-revenue track, meaning we're not getting revenue on that mile that the train is running to go to the yard. So the trade-off really is that you just do not have a train station at the North Lamar area, and you're only saving, pennies to the dollar when it comes to that.
Yeah, the risk really is the governor, and
Yeah.
everything the council members said is his prerogative, and I'm not gonna endorse, but he's not wrong. So I think regarding next steps, John, to your question is how do you support the council member? We definitely want to hear from you. On the screen right now, we have different ways you can provide us input. We're happy to take a letter. You can leave a voicemail. You can email us. You can go on our website, provide comments. If you want the option that goes the furthest north, you're welcome to say that and order off the menu per se. I will say that in the last year and change, 3/4 with Project Connect, only one neighborhood association has sent a letter in writing to us and providing their feedback. It's been members of communities mostly, but if that's something that the North Austin Civic Association wants to do, I just want to mention that is a possibility as well. If you have some.
We found that effective in the past.
Appreciate that. That's a great suggestion.
It is.
Not my first rodeo.
I want to just take a couple of the questions that are online. The first one from Lynn is, surely we would have a signed agreement with TxDOT before proceeding with the North Lamar option, not cross our fingers and hope.
I would just say, we can't control that.
Right.
Can't force TxDOT to sign an agreement. They.
But we are in conversations with them. We
Yes.
are coordinating with them. We're not doing this in a silo.
Yes. What happens if we don't have a
That's right.
signed agreement in the next 3-4 months and we have to make a decision and we don't have a signed agreement? What do we do? It's an open question. I don't have a,
Yeah.
an easy answer for that.
The next one is, the bottom line is that Greg Abbott can stop the whole thing in its tracks if he gets in the way.
What you said.
Is Crestview Airport and Lamar? Yes. Are they already, want North Lamar? Okay. Please provide examples in Texas of development over a rail yard.
There's San Francisco, Muni just did one. There's one in Paris. When I was talking to the ATP folks, they were like, this has been done before, and multiple other rail kind of hobbyists are like, it's really, it's been done before in multiple
Hudson Yards
locations.
is a big-
Yeah.
Hudson Yards is the most recent one.
There's just not an example in the state of
Not in
Texas
Texas,
yet,
no.
but we could be the first example.
So, but there is an example in Houston of the city convention center being partially over railroad track.
Plus area rapid transit.
Yeah,
That's a good point, actually. The
Yeah.
Houston is an example of
Hang
that.
on one second. The last one is, we have a power issues in the neighborhood. Where would the electricity come from? We are in conversations with Austin Energy in order to understand what their power grid looks like and their power needs are currently and what they would be when we eventually become online. So we are in conversations with Austin Energy to be able to manage the power load we would need for this system. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, just in order for the neighborhood association to write a letter, I wanted to make a motion that we support the North Lamar Transit Center location, but if that's not feasible, that we want the train to go as far north as it can, and to support the Crestview location.
I will second that motion.
Okay.
I would add that we would like the
Before we vote,
maintenance facility to be at the North Lamar Transit Center.
Hold on, there was a comment from Monica. Was that you?
yeah, it's me. I have my camera off because it's pretty dark in the room I'm in.
All right. What
I
were you
said
saying?
before there's a vote, I don't think it's appropriate to do so right now because we don't have all our members who are voting members in the room or online. We also need to hear from people in this community, in this neighborhood, who are transit dependent and who could be impacted by any development done. I mean, I put a comment in the chat box, but somehow it was missed. And I said, there needs to be a risk. I mean, a calculation of factoring in the rate and risk, or risk and rate, whatever, of displacement. Because
So-
people will be displaced.
Yeah, and we're scrolling up and we see it, Ms. Guzman, and I appreciate that. I don't think there is a way to quantify that data currently. There's no way to forecast data. If you go to our website and you look at more of the data, we have maps showing where affordable housing is, where persons of color live in Austin, things like that. All that data is backwards facing, as someone on ATP called it. It's like driving forward by looking at your rear view mirror. So we're going by what we know is to be the case from census data, things like that. And then to correct for that, we've done, this community engagement team has done focus groups over the winter before we started these conversations to understand where the community values were. That included going to Georgian Acres, the other HACA sites, to talk to the community at Houston Tillotson. We chose to elevate voices that may not be able to have the opportunity to talk during this period. And then we've also been doing stop outreach. Jocelyn and I on Monday were at Runberg. That was very interesting. I've been at the local bus stop for me, which is Brentwood, and we've had folks all over the city at different bus stops getting feedback and letting folks know that this is happening from regular riders. But unfortunately, I don't know if there's any way to have the entire city both be aware and communicate back their thoughts. So that's why we're going out there and we're talking to them. That's my personal opinion. It's a very challenging thing to do engagement. So we've tried to do different channels and methods, and we know everybody doesn't have computer access. Was it last night or the night before? We were at, we were at Oak Hill.
We had a community engagement with Spanish and Vietnamese speakers. And what resounded from there was right across from the North Lamar Transit Center, and you know, those of us who ride the 801, we know that there's that weird, after 183, you have to go, if you're north and southbound rider, you have to be on the opposite end of, it's all the stops go to the North Lamar Transit Center rather than being on the Oak Hill side. And it's unfortunate, and that rose to the top there. At Redberg, connectivity rose to the top. They were like, you know, put this as far north as you can, which is what they were saying, but make sure it connects to places. I'm sick and tired of having to take 3 buses to work. So, you know, so Monica, I would love to pick your brain also, other places we might have missed. But yeah, we're doing our darndest to be out there.
Yeah.
We have some more questions
Yeah.
in the chat here.
Okay, so we've got a motion on the table, so we need to deal with that. But,
We are having discussion on that motion now.
I mean, is there anything in the chat specific to that?
I think I see one new message, if you can scroll to the most recent.
Y'all have been so.
The Runberg bus stop, yes. Ms. Kuzma.
Lamar and Redberg, yes.
Yeah, Lamar and Runberg, specifically on Monday morning, the southbound stop.
All right.
Councilwoman, how soon would you need this letter? After you on.
Or May 2nd.
Yeah,
Before we second,
ATP needs your feedback before May 2nd. I think if the council member has a tri-party meeting, he'll be attending. I'm gonna assume you're attending that. No conflicts.
No, and I think the tri-party meeting, I think is gonna be set for June something.
D-Day.
Okay. So that's the decision date, we're looking at that as kind of the final decision date. I would say there's still, let's see what happens over these next, a couple of months, and ATP, I know is planning to release more data and kind of information so that the community can analyze it. There's all these kind of transit wonks that are really good at crunching numbers, and I hope that they can get their hands on that stuff and give us some more detail.
And I just want to note, I'm off camera, but I'm taking notes. My name is Vikram, and so we're gonna take back some of these questions to see how we can improve on what we're communicating out to folks. I know that the textile question is something that we specifically do have brought up and we need to answer. And then, what was the other thing? So May 2nd is the deadline for community feedback to ATP.
Okay, so that speaks to the motion that we have, so.
So there's an urgency.
There's an urgency to it,
Agreed.
but there's also an inability to bring it back to a meeting prior to the deadline. So,
Should we hold a special meeting? Would we get more participation than we have right now is my question, and if we want more participation,
I don't
than we
think
have right now. then
the
we
bylaws, I
make it-
believe, allow electronic voting.
I put this out, this particular meeting with information about Project Connect, and I'm gonna be presenting about, ties in with the North Mark Corridor project. I put that out on Nextdoor, and I don't know if any of you came because you saw the Nextdoor post, but that's where I fall kind of with this, if we have a special meeting. I don't know.
I invited like at least 50 people from the community. You guys know that I've had direct connections with quite a few. I directly invited people to this meeting.
I didn't do.
Yeah.
And I don't know, this is a great turnout. I mean, I.
On a rainy day.
Yeah, exactly, with storms and everything pending, I think this is a great turnout myself.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, we've been doing this for a while now. This is a really good turnout, just professionally speaking. I respect your.
I can make a motion that we could send a letter saying what this group expressed interest in tonight, that we could have a vote on what we like tonight, and that's not that's what the assembled people express that they support or not.
I appreciate that, but I did make a motion and I think we should vote on it.
So I agree, and it's been seconded.
So, is there any more discussion?
I don't know what our motion is.
Yeah, what's the motion again?
Okay, we didn't get writing also.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, do you have it, right?
No, I don't.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll repeat. I make a motion that the North Austin Civic Association supports the North Lamar to Pleasant Valley light rail option. If the option is not feasible, that we urge the Austin Transit Partnership, City Council, and Cat Metro to go to place the line as far north as possible, specifically to the Crestview station.
North Lamar or Crestview, that's simple, it's over.
All right.
Okay.
I mean, it's
I mean, that's the only way that this area benefits, really. I mean, if it's gonna be at 45th, you know, that's.
Yeah, like they're gonna use.
So call the.
I second the motion.
No, it's-
Can I-
I think I did.
Yeah, second it.
Okay, all right, yeah, just wait, yeah, go ahead and read it, please.
The motion is that NACA send a letter of support for the North Lamar to PV light rail option beginning at either North Lamar or Crestview. I made it really short.
I think that pretty much, that's all I've been hearing from you.
And does that satisfy what you were saying?
That cover.
No.
I think we should be very specific. But I think as long as Jared also, because Jared would be responsible for sending this. If he has this note written down, and I can repeat it and write it down too, I just think it needs to be very specific. That's exactly what I said.
That it goes to the North Lamar.
Go as far north as possible,
Right.
specifically to
not,
the Crestview station.
at least to Crestview.
I think that's a pretty good, you know, like the option, the North Lamar, Pleasant Valley option. If not that option, then whatever option is chosen needs to go to the Crestview station.
Yes.
It needs to go as far north as the Crestview station.
It's in.
Just write it down.
I'll write it down.
Please.
It is also recorded on Zoom.
Yeah.
Okay, if you could have it recorded on Zoom.
This letter, are there any opportunities where leadership from the neighborhood can send the letter in person to public comment at the tri-party, or, well, at any?
No, I don't think there's public comment on tri-party. We're having, and this is a good segue to the end of this conversation, is we'll be having an event at Kick Butt Coffee with the council member and our community advisory council on April 26th. And it's that information afterwards in detail, but it'll be starting at 5:30. So you know, if at that time you want to present written comments, we'll definitely accept them. And that'll be an in-person meeting. I'll be there as well as some other colleagues and technical staff.
And I would say I'm happy to coordinate also with anybody, like the public comment at city council and public comment at Capital Metro. You know, it never hurts to have somebody show up and say, hey, I'm from NACA. I just want to make you aware of this letter where we're supporting this option. Well, you know, everybody hears it and pass out a copy of the letter and we're done. So I'm happy to, you know, coordinate that.
I think it's basically put in writing what our motion is, forward that if we vote in favor of this. So, if,
And I emailed that, the word to everyone on the executive team and Melinda, to make sure we capture it.
all right,
Most of
so
the president will send a
all
letter.
in favor?
I,
All right.
And let's make sure
How
we
about
count the folks online.
Remotely,
And
any in favor?
you
Not in
can, you can
favor?
also,
Monica's the only one that hadn't raised her hand.
yeah, some of the, some people do not have their,
There
Camera
are
on,
5 cameras off, so I don't know if they raised their hand or
No,
not.
we see
you
you.
can,
We see
you can do the little
Yeah.
raise your hand thing on reactions.
Randy, would you mind starting over just from the top?
So, all right, let's have the vote again.
I think we should excuse ourselves. at this
Yeah,
point
well,
because
yeah.
I don't want to.
Much, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you all.
So, all right, so thank y'all very much.
You need to leave, you need to.
So for those who are remote, it's because I can't see a bunch of faces, I can't,
That's all right. You could do the little reactions thing.
the reaction, see, they
Yeah,
give a
you
thumbs
could
up.
do
or
a little
down.
thumbs up.
So this is for a yes vote.
This is a yes,
Yes.
thumbs
That's
up
for
for
yes
yes, thumbs
All right.
down for no.
There's no, I don't know, for
So-
no, I guess you could put a little crying face.
We're gonna have to
There we
work
go.
on this. All right.
Yes.
And
Right now,
Yeah,
let's change it. And then we put it on the thing.
Sure, and I'll keep it super short. Honestly, I probably have to get it home too, because my family. So,
We have-
I'm thankful much for getting the letter, in there.
We have one down
So-
vote.
I think you have that,
I'll try to keep it short. They were looking, we gave this owner a loan, a forgivable loan, the city and another, like a nonprofit organization that funds supportive housing. The loan has conditions saying you have to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. The city and the nonprofit, bank,
Yeah.
have
There's
sent
definitely one
letters,
down vote.
basically a notice of foreclosure, kind of saying like, or I can't remember the exact name, but basically saying you're violating the terms of your loan. If you don't, correct that, we will foreclose. Thus far, there has not been, in the city's view, sufficient corrective action, honestly, any corrective action, at Redfield, and the city has hired, a law firm to foreclose. The only thing is we're the secondary lender, the bank is actually the primary lender, so we both have to get on the same page. But it looks like we're on the same page, and it looks like, we will be moving forward with foreclosure relatively soon. I wish I had a timeline, I wish I had something more certain to say, that it'll be on this date. The city, does have a plan to move its people out to the another permanently supportive housing, in other words, the folks that we're helping out that are there, we're gonna be like, we got some spots for you over here, we've been preparing for that. That's kind of where we are. Just because you file foreclosure, that doesn't end everything. Honestly, sometimes that's the start of the negotiations and the discussions and all that kind of stuff like that. It wouldn't shock me if at some point there was a sale from that owner to, I don't know, maybe that nonprofit bank, maybe the city, I don't know, there may be another buyer, I'm not sure, but I would say that there will be action in relatively quick on Redfield. That's kind of where we are. I've talked to the police chief, I've talked to our district reps, they're well aware of the situation. They have promised to, give extra kind of patrols and try to stay on top of it as possible. I passed by there a couple weeks ago, and I know now it looks worse than it did before. I think they've got plywood up on, a couple of and my understanding actually was that I think they lost water to half of the one side, or, anyway, so there's, I think, a number of units that are down. So it's a struggling complex, and we're hoping to kind of end that relatively soon. So that's where we are right now. I will double check with the city and double check with Austin, Housing Finance Corporation folks that are kind of running point and legal, and get you a more recent update, but that's probably 3-week-old information from the last time that I talked to the Redfield folks.
Is the process similar to the one that they did, what was Cross Creek is now Creek's Edge? Rutland and Merge Meadow?
I'm not familiar with that, so, no, it's different. Yeah.
Well,
You said Austin Finance
Took it.
Austin Housing Finance Corporation. Yeah, they're the ones that they own all the cities, like housing, and they're kind of our company that runs our housing.
So they're managing this stretch.
Their people are, yes.
In the meantime, can we continue to call Code and tell them to cut their grass?
Yes,
These was semi-decent?
and empty the dumpsters.
Yes.
Absolutely, please do, and I will also stay on top of them with that. The guy is really kind of in a standoff, he's kind of like, I think folded his arms and been like, well, if you're not gonna do anything, then I'm not gonna do anything, and like, it's just like, man, this is your property, you need to manage it according to, code, and, I mean, it's just, this is not a kind of a game that we're gonna play, you have to meet certain livability standards that you're clearly not even, meeting at this point. So unfortunately, like I said, I hard to see this getting resolved in a, I've lost all faith in him as kind of a good faith partner. And so we just need to, he's kind of, I don't know if y'all saw some of his communications and stuff, but he's like, basically, once we solve society's problems, he'll fix the apartment. He's like, you need gun control, and we need to also hire 300, the vacant police positions and all that. And it's just like, man, you need to manage your apartment complex, and everybody around you manages their apartment complexes. Like, so that's kind of where we are. How are y'all seeing it? What, anything new in terms of action?
Just some comments in the chat here.
Cool.
Someone's asking, what about the people living in the cars over there? And what happens to the property, after the residents move?
I would say what happens to the property, the question becomes, buys it. So that'll tell us a lot what happens to it. If it goes into foreclosure and it's just kind of sold at auction, like foreclosure properties are, then it's just highest bidder, whoever comes in is gonna do whatever they're gonna do with it. I would imagine they would, renovate and, and rent it out, again, like a normal apartment complex. If the city or this bank, a partner, buys it or acquires it through foreclosure, something to that effect, then I'm sure that we would probably use it for affordable housing, not for supportive homeless housing. I just don't think it has a right setup, honestly. Just looking at it, it's too open to the street. The properties that have been more successful have just had we need on-site management. I mean, you've got to have on-site management and 24/7 security. And that's a difficult complex. It's a little too small to kind of make it, I think, worth the money, to have on-site management and 24/7 security, for what, 34 units or something like that, 30 some odd units. So my sense is that it would probably just go, if we did buy it, I would push for just like, what I mean, 50% MFI, 30%, just normal affordable housing, maybe give it over to HACA. I'm not sure, but it would just be more of a normal affordable housing property. Again, that's my sense. It's still, a few steps out, but that would be my sense. Yes,
A
sir.
follow-up question here, but do they still have to adhere to the city contract?
They do, but they're not adhering to it right now. And at this point, I just don't anticipate them actually coming into compliance and actually doing everything that they're supposed to be doing. So, they are supposed to. And what's your remedy when someone is not adhering to the contract? You sue them. And in this case, we would just call in the note and say, hey, you're not abiding by the terms of your loan agreement. I'm calling all the money that you owe us due right now, and you need to pay us. And if you can't pay us, then, we're gonna force the property to foreclosure and auction and stuff. And not to get super technical, but in foreclosure, the people who are owed the money have the best chance of buying it out of foreclosure. We've already kind of got credit, to use. So I think the city and our partner would have a good shot of getting out of foreclosure. I know there's been conversations to this effect. I will update y'all as soon as I have more information. Like I said, this is about 3-week-old information.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I can give you my viewpoint since I live right next door to it.
Yeah.
In the last week or so, I've seen 2 full-grown large dogs that are aggressive, running into different parts of the street, people's yards, getting real aggressive with my wife. It's a black pit bull. Another one, brown dog, fighting, shouting, all hours of the night. Today, actually, there was a substantial police presence from U.S. Marshals, federal agents, at least 8 to 9 of them. There were 3 towing vehicles that showed up and towed at least 2 vehicles off the property. There was about a lot of action.
Yeah.
There's at least 1 vehicle there still abandoned and disabled, needs to be towed. The side of the apartment complex you're talking about that has the portable windows, it has the sewage leak. They've had multiple contractors come out there and none of them went in to fix it. That's been going on for months.
I appreciate the update. I mean, in my totally, amateur. Clearly, there was some pretty serious drug dealing going on out there. I mean, when you park across the street and, watch for just, 10 minutes, it doesn't take long, they're just like. That's a lot of cars coming in and out of there and everybody's going to kind of be in one spot. Because I tried to keep an eye on it and it was clear that, so I would imagine that the US Marshal, I told the police chief about it, he said that they were going to put it with their kind of investigation unit and see what they could do. I'm not 100% sure what the follow-up was to, my conversation with them, but I mean, if the US Marshal showed up, that's usually, they go for the higher quantity drug seizures and or felons that are in possession of a weapon, felons that are in, kind of ongoing kind of criminal activity, kind of stuff like that. So that's what I'll try to pull. In my prior life, I was a criminal defense attorney. I'll try to pull the filings, federal PACER filings, that all of that, the arrest warrant affidavit will be a public knowledge. I only track it by name. I don't know if I can track it by location, but I'll see what I can do to just to get the affidavit will have kind of the basis for the arrest and what the feds kind of view about it and all that stuff. And if I can pull that, I'll share it with NACA.
Today. So,
Today, yeah. So it should be up online tomorrow. Like they almost instantly post it. Once they execute it, they go ahead and publish the arrest warrant affidavit. So I'll see if I can track that down. Appreciate the update. My apologies. I mean, it was a project that it didn't work. And I'll say this as, on St. John's and 35, there's what they call a North Bridge, which is the bridge shelter, a hotel city turned it into a bridge shelter. No idea it was there until I toured it. I was like, oh, is it here? You know what I mean? It was just like, you would have had no idea that this was that's what we need to do. You know what I mean? Where everyone's like, oh, like that's exactly the reaction that we need when we do establish affordable housing. I don't even want people to know that. They're just like, oh, it's just a normal kind of or whatever. And that was not successful. And I've emphasized that to the city that if we're going to be successful in housing, folks can't do that. Because we're going to lose support and that's not. City manager, I'm not, I will say that there are multiple pending announcements that I'm gonna let the city manager and the mayor, roll out. I don't have all the details yet, but we should be announcing a substantial amount of new housing for homeless folks to get folks out of the creeks and the new parks and that kind of stuff like that, and to put them into potentially concrete shelter or other. But I'm hoping, and I know the mayor's been pushing on this super hard. The city manager also was just, what do you want me to work on? Get people off the streets and get them into acceptable shelter. It doesn't have to be perfect. The permanently supportive housing is expensive. It's hard to stand up. There's a lot of things that go on. It's in the pipeline, but it's taking too long. We need a stopgap measure, and I know that they are working on that and hope to announce it. Very good. Y'all, thank you so much. Pleasure. I'm trying to take it back to another night for me as good as possible. Please don't hesitate to reach out, get an email to my office, District 4 at austintexas.gov or chico.vela@austintexas.gov. I will say we are with emails. We're trying to stay on top of them and to reply, but it's phenomenal, like the level of communication, and sometimes they get a little bit delayed. But everything is being, read. I can't always reply to them, but we are definitely reading all the communications that come in. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got just a few minutes. You want to make
Yeah.
a short summary?
Yeah, sure. This ties in with, what we were talking about with Project Connect. Melinda and I had a meeting with the North Lamar Corridor program. I'm trying to get their name right, and I have been talking with a toddler from the wee hours, so I'm trying to pull through. It's a corridor program office. This is for the North Lamar Corridor project. It's something that's going to take place from, oh, there it is. Thank you, Brian. Can you go to, 2 slides ahead? I'll try to do this really quick for everyone and for my brain. Yeah, perfect. Go back up one. Yeah, so from 183, where like the transit center is, all the way up to that little guy is Howard Lane. And then Palmer, Jaeger, Oakbrook, Breaker, Applegate, Runberg, so on. So they were looking at, I think it was voted on, Linda, did they say it was voted on in 2014 or 16 as mobility bond? Gosh, I'm trying to remember. 16, thank you, yeah. So this was voted on, and this is happening. And the next slide shows there's need for improvement, which we all probably know already. Fatalities, injuries, pedestrian crashes. Next slide. So this is, I don't know where this one in particular is, but it's showing before and after, where the before is very familiar to us, where there's cars entering and exiting different ways and multiple points of getting out of a parking lot. So if you just drive up and on any of these businesses, there's like HEB, for instance, there's like 6 different ways you can get in and out. And that just increases fatalities, accidents, things like that. So the corridor project is looking to delete and can you go up 2 slides, please? Or sorry, go ahead 2 slides. So yeah, corridor challenges. We have sidewalks that are not continuous and they're not ADA compliant. There's no bike lanes. There's open drainage ditches. There are crossing points, but they're far apart from each other. There are, bus stops, black benches and shelters, numerous driveways. That was the thing that stuck out to me because that's something that I noticed when I moved up to this neighborhood, that it's hard to navigate because you got people coming at you from different ways. So what they're looking to do is to reduce those driveways, entry and exit points, like I said before, and add, they're going to delete the drainage ditches and replace it with sewers, closed storm sewers, yay. And then also on top of that, we have room for pedestrian sidewalks and bike lane. So bike lane and pedestrian all the way from 183. And if I just thought if we got if we got the North Lamar Transit Center as a hub, this ties in with that, where people that you can bike or walk safely all the way down there to catch your bus or the light rail.
This is the state maintenance area.
Yes. Yes, so that was
They're agreeing to this?
that was mentioned that they are working with TxDOT. There is, let's see, where's the other? Can you go to the next slide?
TxDOT has agreed to the improvements that have been made already. Because they took away, from Rutland, down to about page 10, the ability to cross the middle of the street.
Well,
You had to take right turns to get out.
the Rutland is a mess on our side of it. The sidewalks are inconsistent.
All about sidewalks, but they Make it so you cannot, you can take left-hand turns in those places.
The other thing that they're gonna be doing, which I really appreciated too, was there are. At any point from one on Lamar, from 183 up to, where is it, Howard? That you could make a U-turn. You could just in the middle of the street, yank your car up. There will be what do they call the medians?
Yeah.
Installed there, so that it will help control traffic flow and people can't just, it feels like, and this is because I've only lived up here for 3 years now, it just feels like you have to be on. And especially during rush hour, there's cars coming, you can't feel safe walking with my daughter on that street because you just never know. So yeah, the next slide, so
There's a question here whether the pipelines in North Lamar will require eminent domain or if they can be laid out without taking property.
good question. Yeah, so there are easements. We saw, I think we asked about that. We saw some properties where you could see the fence and then you have an easement on that fence. I don't believe that they are taking property.
No, they're not really, he didn't mention taking really any
Residential.
residential.
But I know, yeah, deleting and taking property from businesses. I do know that because that's the only residence would be on there's a stretch on the eastern side of Lamar where you could see there were fences and an easement there. And the bike lanes and pedestrian walkways would be not in that easement. They wouldn't be in that, or wouldn't be affected. But, can you read that, Brian?
My concern is the potential use of eminent domain for residential property. Includes HACA, Thurman Heights.
Okay. I do not know, that was not asked and it was not mentioned, where I could tell you if I could see a map.
This is just along North Lamar, so there's no residential along
Yeah.
North Lamar except for along Georgian Acres where the neighborhoods are backed up to North Lamar right before HEB. Between.
There are multiple residential properties on North Lamar.
What do you mean?
Well, Thurman Heights is.
Thurman Heights is a Haka property. There's also apartments, Ivy, Aubrey.
Taking any property from any of those places, no. They're only making improvements to the sidewalk, including the bike lanes.
I understand that. However, I know for years, people had been wanting bike lanes on Runberg, which they couldn't do because the street wasn't wide enough. I'd never heard any discussion regarding North Lamar. That's why I asked, will they be able to lay out the bike lanes without use of eminent domain? And if they have to use it, is there the potential for use on residential properties? Because there's 2 or 3 apartment complexes, and as well as a Haka property. Their main entrance is on Lamar.
This presentation shows the improvements. And so we can email out this presentation so you can see the exact improvements. They only mentioned moving North Lamar slightly 6 feet between 183 and Peyton Gin. Might be moved slightly to the left, to the west, 6 feet. But they didn't mention any other movement besides along that area.
Yeah, there was a curve at Heron Hollow Park. There was a curve that they were gonna have to take a few feet off of for this project.
We have about 3 minutes.
Yep, thank you. That's, yeah, the last slide. Oh yeah, there's Heron Hollow Pocket Park. That was there's a corner in that top photo here. I think this was the one that was going to be affected. They are going to improve, there's the waterway under there. They're going to improve drainage for flood prevention. So that's very good. see. I think the last one, Runberg Department, yeah, myself and Melinda, we have copies of this plan as well as there's a couple other renderings that are in it. Maybe we could get this up on the website or we can email it. There's, on the last slide, Brian, there's questions, comments, concerns. You can contact the North Lamar Corridor team and ask specifics. They're very responsive over email, and have been really helpful so far. So yeah, that concludes the presentation. Does anybody?
We don't have much time for comment,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So, thank you very much. Yeah, maybe we can get this on the website and then just over the link, everybody.
Yeah.
Do anything with these payments?
No, we left them as they were, so that's very great shape.
Yeah.
So then I move we adjourn this meeting.
I have a motion to adjourn, my folks.
Second.
And I said, you know, remind me this.